Willkommen zum ersten Goldinvest-Interview im noch sehr jungen Jahr 2019. Wir sprechen mit Michael Hudson, dem CEO von Mawson Resources, einem sehr spannenden Kobalt- und Gold-Explorer, dessen Projekt in Finnland liegt. Mawson hat Ende letzten Jahres sehr interessante Neuigkeiten veröffentlicht. Da wollen wir mal genauer hören, worum es geht. Und natürlich wollen wir jetzt zu Jahresbeginn einen Ausblick auf 2019 einholen. Michael, welcome.
Thanks, Björn. Happy New Year.
Yes, to you too. I said this is the first interview I'm doing in 2019, so of course we'll go for your outlook for the year later. But to start, we want to talk about the news you brought out end of last year, which was a culmination of all the drilling Mawson did, or almost all the drilling you did in 2018, that is the initial resource calculation for the Rajapalot Gold and Kobaltprojekt, to be precise, Raja and Palokas prospects. Could you please summarize the results for us?
It was a good start for us, Björn. As you said, it was really the majority of the drilling that we conducted in 2018, with some of the drilling in 2017, and we produced what is a very solid resource as a first up resource, or a maiden resource that we say. So we have an inferred resource constrained, which means it's constrained with mining parameters, broad mining parameters, of 424,000 ounces at just over 3 grams per tonne gold equivalent. Within that, we have an open pittable model resource and then an underground resource. The underground resource is much higher grade at 5.2 grams, and then the broader overall resource, unconstrained, we say, is closer to 500,000 ounces. In fact, 482,000 ounces. So this is, of course, just very much a start, but a very good start, and infinitely expandable.
That's what I was going to talk about you now, because these are great numbers, but as you said, it's an initial or a maiden resource. And if I remember correctly, you only covered a very small part of the known mineralized trend in Finland there.
Yeah, it's really early days along the resource area, or the resource area is only a smaller part of the bigger system. So we've got more or less about a 4-kilometre trend that we're dealing with at the moment. The resource is only about 800 metres of that known mineralised trend to date. The average depth of drilling, and I haven't got it off the top of my head, but it was around about 120, 130 metres. So it's very shallow. We know that the current resource at Raya prospect goes down 400 odd metres down plunge, about 300 metres vertically. And we can see that down to a kilometre down plunge with geophysics, and we'll talk about that in a minute, I'm sure. But the resources continue to much greater depth. So we're really just looking at the very top shallow levels, very much in the zone of where you'd see open pittable resources continuing down to underground resources. But early days along strike at depth, and that's obviously defines where we need to go next.
That's the thing, where you need to go next. You talked about the geophysics. You did, I think it was electromagnetic surveys of different sorts recently, which you completed, which gave you some promising targets. Can you tell about that?
Yeah, we are very fortunate that the mineralization, as we say, lights up like a Christmas tree, and I'm sure I've used that with you before. But when we put electrical currents into the ground, the mineralization, that the gold mineralization is associated with sulfide minerals that are conductive. So it's very much like a metal detector, where you might see a prospector with a metal detector on the beach or somewhere looking for little nuggets of gold or coins.
Pilbara, for example.
For example, and we make these very big metal detectors that are somewhat like 500 meters by 500 meters or something like that. So we know that the mineralization, the gold mineralization, where we've measured it now, where we've got that first initial resource, lights up and we can see it, but it doesn't just light up in the known zone. It continues immediately below that, and as I said, the geophysics can see the Raya prospect down to a kilometre down the plunge of the body. We've only tested 400 metres of that, and of course that's only a limitation of how deep we can see it to date. It's actually open beyond that, and we're still got surveyors out there doing this work. So we've done a lot of geophysics over the years to test the near surface area, when we've basically been going through the science experiment of trying to find the gold. The research and development end of the project, or the stage of the project, is coming to an end, and the project's pivoting to the resource and resource expansion, and now we're starting to look deeper for those resources, and like I said, there's crews out there still going, helping us define drill targets.
Okay, so you have targets, you're looking at more targets. What are the plans for 2019 then? Will you focus on Rauta and Palokas to increase the resources there at depth, or will you go for to broaden the resource, the known resource areas? Will you drill other prospects? What are the plans for this year?
Yeah, it's very tempting to. We're like a bull in a china shop, right? How do we focus? And clearly, this project, with that pivoting that I spoke about, needs to build tons. We need to build tons beyond the known resources, and the easiest way to do that is to extend the known resources for the main part. And that will be the focus of extending those initial resources, and where we know that those electromagnetic anomalies extend beyond. It also happens at Palokas, which was the other part of this resource. Notwithstanding, we have a lot of targets still to drill near surface, and we'll put some efforts into drilling those, but it's a little harder to continue the exploration when we know we're building tons in the other areas. So I'd say 80% building tons, 20% of the drill focus will be to define new areas. And I should say it's all subject to permitting. Every year, every 2 or 3 years in Finland, every permit in Finland goes through a renewal stage, and the area that we're drilling is going through a renewal, and that's currently going through the stages now. We hope to have 5 rigs on the ground before the end of January, but that's just subject to that permitting.
Well, 5 rigs, it sounds pretty aggressive. You should get some drilling done with that. So looking forward to good news flow here, hopefully. Now we've been talking about the project as a cobalt and gold project, but we've been talking about the grades in terms of gold equivalent. As you said, I think in your press release even, that Rajapalot is one of the 3 leading gold projects in Finland in terms of grade and contained ounces. But the cobalt content is also very important, or of strategic importance. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, it's quite a simple one. I mean, it is a gold project. About 80% of the value comes from gold, and about 20% of that gold equivalent, if you like, comes from the value of cobalt. That's associated intimately with the gold. And metallurgically, there's no red flags at the moment. We're going through the met work with the cobalt to make sure it's extractable. It's in minerals that have been extracted and are extracted in other cobalt deposits. So what is important about that is that Finland has the world's largest cobalt refinery 400 kilometres south of us in a place called Kokkola. And Finland wants to be part of the sustainable and ethical supply chain for cobalt leading to batteries. They want to be the whole part of that supply chain. The politicians in Finnish society are very adamant about that. So Finland is has the largest single cobalt refinery in the world. They produce 10% globally, or 50% of non-Chinese refined cobalt. Yet over 90% of that cobalt today is sourced. Those cobalt minerals are sourced from the Democratic Republic of Congo, which has some questions around it, of course, in a macro sense. And they only produce about 0.5% of the world's mined cobalt to date. So coming up with a very strategic gold and cobalt resource for Finland is very important, and this will grow and become a lot bigger, and will really has the option to help Finland meet its needs for those sustainable and ethical desires that they pursue in the battery and cobalt space.
Yeah, sounds like you're in the right place there. Okay, there's a lot of work before you for this year. A lot of drilling to do, further tech geophysics. If all went well in an ideal mining world, where would you like to be with the project at the end of this year?
If all went well in the mining world, which you say.
Terms, yes.
Now, what I'd like to see is at least a doubling of the resource volume. We'll never know the grade until we drill it, but I can see that we'll clearly, should we get those permits in place to drill, the 15 kilometres, I should say, with those 5 drill rigs that we've got planned in the next few weeks to start, we'd like to at least double that current volume or tonnage, and let's see what happens with the grade. It looks great so far, and let's trust that continues. And then with a vision, then we can start to see, close to 1 million or over 1 million ounces, and then we can see a lot more tons attributed to around those resources. So then you can start to see that it's really becoming quite a significant project, and that would be the vision.
Okay, well, let's hope you get there. This gold price at least seems to be headed in the right direction for the moment. You never know these days what's going to happen, but it's looking good, and we wish you all the best for this year and your efforts, and we'll talk to you once you have an update for us.
That's great, Björn. Thanks. There's very few high-grade projects in very good jurisdictions that are infinitely expandable, so we look forward to updating you.
Thanks.